All right. So over the weekend, Daniel Penny, the man who recently was involved in the situation on the New York City subway that ended in Jordan Neely losing his life, he turned himself in this weekend, and essentially he's facing actually, I'm not sure if he's been charged yet. I'm pretty sure we're waiting to hear what the charges are actually going to be from at least this point in the video. But he has already had a GoFundMe started that has raised at this point over $2 million to help pay for his case and maybe bond if he's able to get one, and just aid in his campaigning to proclaim his innocence. And that money is going to be very necessary because there is a lot of energy and power against him in the state of New York. It is a state where these kind of things are completely frowned upon, even when you are doing it for the betterment and the safety of society and your fellow citizens. So that's why I'm happy that as much money has been raised as has been for him, because he's a person who you would not like to see anybody in that situation. And I've seen people, specifically like Brian Krasenstein, gotta love those guys, make mention and compare the fact that they've only raised like $160K for the family of the gentleman who lost his life, Mr. Neely. And he's like basically saying that it speaks to some great disservice to the American people that culturally we, would want to support and raise money for a man like Daniel Penny versus a man like Jordan Neely. And I absolutely think it says the opposite. I think anybody with common sense and a brain can understand that it represents the exact opposite, actually. I'm very proud that for once, people are really standing up in this manner. I mean, we saw the Kyle Rittenhouses. We saw all these people who they try and put in these situations to make it seem like these are terrible, murderous, bloodthirsty individuals. It's almost like a human sacrifice. Like we choose this scapegoat to put all of the racism and white guilt onto, and when they get involved in an unwinnable situation, that the situation that Daniel Penny faced was unwinnable. But anyways, we wait for those people and we're like, finally, the prophecy has been fulfilled. We have a fat white pig to put on an altar and slaughter in front of the cult of progressivism. And that's exactly what is happening right now. Except finally, Americans who actually care about our country are waking, like myself, are waking up and realizing that this is happening. And we're saying, no, we don't support that. We don't support it for ourselves. We don't support it for our family and our loved ones. And we don't support it for the citizens of the United States of America. Daniel Penny is no different. For all of the people who say, the greatest argument that you can have in this situation is to say that he shouldn't have taken the life of this man. I think that is unfair to even make that commentary, because when you're presented situations like this, one, happen more often than they should, way more often than they should in a place like New York City. But the truth of the matter is that the average person, myself, yourself, will never be put in a circumstance remotely close to what Daniel Penny had to face that day, the decision that he had to make. So that already skews our judgment. And we should be allowed the leeway as American citizens when it comes to defending our life and the safety of those around us. We should be allowed the leeway of understanding that when a one-off situation like that is handled, it may not come out the best. It may not come out great. There may be justice that will have to be served after the fact, meaning that, there can be, just because one wrong is committed doesn't mean that all other wrongs are exempt or that they don't exist. You can do something wrong to somebody who has committed a wrong. You can murder a murderer if the context is right. But none of that has to do with this situation. In a situation where you are trying to de-escalate violent, erratic behavior from a stranger, surrounded by other strangers, potential loved ones, elderly, children, the first thing that you should do is immediately de-escalate the situation with whatever force is necessary to protect those who are defenseless. That's your priority number one. It isn't protect it and make sure that he doesn't die. I'm sorry, but like, we have to be very candid in this conversation. It's not protect everybody, but make sure this guy doesn't die. That is not your priority. Your priority is simply to protect them. Now, that doesn't mean that your priority is, I need to kill this man so that I can protect everybody else. Not in that kind of a circumstance or scenario. If he was brandishing a weapon or anything like that, that'd be one, a whole other thing. But I say all this just to rationally go through what any human being should be thinking. But going through those thought processes and motions doesn't mean, or shouldn't mean, that when you get to the end and you make your decision that you're going to protect people in any way that you can, if that person passes away based off of the defense methods that you used or the restraint methods, if you did what you could to try to preserve life for that human, even in that situation, then that's all that we could ask. By them laying him out in the recovery position once they finally let him go, that's all that we could ask for from a citizen who is not, who we would assume or can't assume is professionally trained in any capacity with life-saving skills, meaning I don't know CPR, I don't know mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. If I was expected to save somebody's life, I wouldn't have even known to put them in the restoration position because I didn't know about anything like that until I Googled it based off of them saying that he did that. So if I was in the exact same situation as Daniel Penny and I was holding this man, restraining him, when I was done, I would just walk away from it. I wouldn't even put him on his side because I wouldn't know anything about that. And would that be wrong of me? No, man. Because when you get to that point, when you get to the point where you have to restrain the crazy guy, it's not that all right and wrong goes out the window. It's not like you can go and then like sexually assault a guy or something like that. And everybody's like, well, he was being very threatening. Obviously, there's levels to this. But intention is another big part. It's important to think or to factor in, to consider. And do I think the intention of Daniel Penny was to kill this man? No. I think that his intention was to protect everybody else who was on the public transportation with him. And as a result of the method that he chose to go about restraining this gentleman, along with two other individuals, it resulted in the erratic homeless man losing his life, which is unfortunate and is a tragedy to a certain degree. But with all of that being said, does that mean that Daniel Penny deserves jail time or anything? Any of the scrutiny that he's received thus far? No. I appreciate people having empathy for a dead person, for a person who died when they may not be mentally there. Their mental faculties may not be performing neurotypically. But with all of that being said, you can't lose sight of what we do it for and who we do it for. It's the children. It's the elderly. It's those that can't protect themselves. And it is ourselves at the end of the day. I'm not saying that Daniel Penny didn't do all of that stuff because he wanted to be safe on the butt, or, that he didn't do it because he didn't want to be safe too. I'm trying to make sure I don't say double negatives. Obviously, he wanted to protect himself as well. But if he wanted to protect himself first and foremost, there are other ways that you can do it to make sure that you are protected. But when you're going and confronting a gentleman acting erratic in a group of people like that, you're putting yourself further in danger in order to hopefully protect others around you. And one thing that scares me about this situation is that we don't want that sentiment to leave American people. We don't want American people to be in these situations and be afraid to do the right thing or protect somebody because of the potential outcome of negativity. We want to protect the American citizens' right to protect themselves, because our country will go to a very bad place if we don't protect that. You know? So that's what I think about when I see the Daniel Penny case and situation going on. And when you compare the GoFundMes for one of them to the other, what more is Jordan Neely's family going to need for his funeral? $160,000. It's a funeral, right? It's not like you guys are the ones pressing charges against him. Unless you want to, and you get a legal team to sue him for wrongful death so you can get some more money. It's not up to the society to fund that for you. Like, it's not up to us to fund that for you. The funeral, okay. Pay for the funeral. Like, that's cool that we paid for the funeral for this guy, even though I can argue that he maybe didn't even deserve that. But it's not for the family, right? But you guys wanting Daniel Penny's blood because of your loved one's, situation, that's not justice. That's not what America's founded on. And that's not what America stands for. It's not what I stand for as an American citizen. Sorry for your loss. Better luck next time. And everybody, please be strong and don't let this scare you from doing the right thing in this kind of circumstance. Like I said earlier, most of us will never go through anything even remotely similar to this, which is good. That's good. But for those of you who do, and for those of you who come into contact with a similar scenario, don't be afraid. There are only so many things that you go through in life that become defining points for everything that happens afterwards. This was one of those moments, not only for Daniel Penny, but for New York City as a whole. Because what happens after this case will predict the trajectory of the city. If that man goes to prison for this, you can kiss New York City goodbye in totality. Because when the average citizen is afraid to protect themselves and others from the crazies, who wins? And that is why I feel the way that I do about this situation, because we can't let the crazies win, even though there are a lot of people who have an agenda for letting the crazies win. I'm glad to be back here making these videos again, and I hope that you guys have a great rest of your evening.